Tell me about when Scott Shannon tried to hire you for pirate radio.
So Tom and I had been doing nights at FLZ, the Power Pig. Randy Cabrick, the late great Randy Cabrick, had gone on to Y95 in Dallas, the frequency which became KLTY.
Right.
Randy wanted Tom and me to come to Dallas and do nights for him because of what he saw us do at FLZ. Well, I don't know if and Shannon would come to town. You know, his wife was from Tampa. They met while he was at Q105. Either it was because he heard us and he liked us there, or because he and Randy Cabrick were very competitive. Mm-hmm. So Cabrick's trying to hire us to come do nights in Dallas. And we were already doing nights. We didn't really care to do that. Well, then Shannon, I think just because they were competitive, wait a minute, you're trying to hire these guys? I need a night jock. And then all of a sudden it's like, maybe we'll do nights if it's in LA. I have, back in the day when you got the little pink slips.
Yeah.
You know, for the receptionist,
right.
You know, somebody called, they'd write it down for you. I still have it. It's dated and it says, you know, from, and the receptionist in her beautiful cursive writing wrote Scott Shannon. And below that, it said message. And it said, where's my tape? Question mark.
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
Today's guest has powerfully shaped some of the biggest names and brands in broadcasting. With leadership roles at Jacor, Emmis, Tribune, and Clear Channel, he's overseen scores of stations coast to coast and made his mark at some of radio's most iconic call letters, the Power Pig in Tampa, the Loop in Chicago, KGB in San Diego, and WGN in Chicago. He's also played a key role in building one of the most influential faith-based media organizations in the country. His leadership journey is a deep dive as it is wide, blending creative vision and operational excellence, from high-stakes media mergers to cutting-edge digital strategy, from commercial giants to non-commercial missions. He's been a steady hand and a trusted voice every step of the way. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the remarkable journey of Hope Media Group President Tim Dukes. Tim, welcome to the show.
Wow, man. Thank you for having me. First of all, Chachi. And secondly, I was wondering I thought there was going to be a second guest there for a while.
You have had such an incredible career, and we worked together briefly at Jacor, but for a long time, man, I've just followed your career, and you've just been such a kind, supportive, just wonderful human being. And so I'm just grateful that you are in the business, and you're also, you know, someone who's really been on both sides, on the commercial side, the non-com side, which is unusual. And so I'm excited to learn about that part. I really know, you know, commercial radio, but non-com is very, you know, I guess it goes as far as to say foreign to me. So I'm excited to learn from you and learn more about your journey.
Well, I'm delighted that you asked me to join. I'm just thrilled that to be part of this. And by the way, if there were no Art Volo, you would truly be radio's best friend.
I love being compared to Art. Art is a good man. He's got a much deeper catalog than I do. That is for sure.
You're such a champion for what we do with this platform, with this medium. I admired what you did, you know, leaving the station level and going and doing something entrepreneurial. I have no entrepreneurial instincts. I'm such a product of corporate culture, if you will, corporate in the positive sense.
Sure.
And to do something entrepreneurial and start something out of dust. I remember when you did that and I was impressed, and it's really been neat to see your journey too.
Oh, thanks, man. That really puts a smile on my face. Thank you very much. And it means a lot. Tell me a little bit about growing up.
I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. I was adopted, if that matters.
No kidding.
Yeah. And, I was 5 weeks old. So my parents are my parents. I've never met my biological parents, but I did get to meet and work with my childhood radio idol. When I was growing up, my dad listened to 84 WHAS. Back then it was known as the Cuddly Giant. That was their slogan. And, Gary Burbank was the afternoon guy there. And I was probably 8 years old. I figured out that I was not going to be good enough to be a professional baseball player because that's all I ever wanted to do. I grew up 90 minutes from Cincinnati, and Pete Rose and Johnny Bench were my heroes.
Yeah.
But seriously, I'm like, I'm not even the best kid on my team, let alone how am I going to make it to the big leagues? But I loved what Gary Burbank did every afternoon on the radio on WHAS. And I'd never heard the term theater of the mind until I was probably in radio, and I was a late bloomer. I never got into it until I was 20. But yeah, when I heard that, I immediately thought back to Gary, and I'm like, that's what he did. That's why I loved it so much. He was painting pictures with words, and I was just consumed by it. It's what I decided, by the time I was in third grade, of what I wanted to do.
And was this something that your parents were supportive of?
Yeah, I've heard of people are like, "Oh no, son, don't go into radio. Get a real job." They never said that. They were always supportive of it.
Did you learn at an early age that you were adopted, or was that something that they told you later on?
Always knew it. Yeah. My dad, by the way, was in construction. He's 86 years old now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
My mom passed away in the 90s. My dad remarried, but both my dad and my stepmom are 86 years old. And he was in construction and had these dreams of me joining him in the company. And I just had no interest in that. Maybe it's because I was adopted, and I learned how to drive a nail and pour concrete and do all that stuff. But I'm just like, no, Dad, you know what Gary Burbank does sounds like a lot more fun to me. So I knew what I wanted to do.
So you got your first gig, I believe, at YHY in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you took that gig?
I was 20. I just turned 20. I was a junior. The fall semester had just started. In my sophomore year, there was a girl named Vicki Valentine. That was her real name.
Great name.
And I was like, Vicki, we had communication classes together. And I'm like, Vicki, you've got to get me a job at the radio station. Well, okay, I'm going to try and all this. Well, sophomore year ended, no luck. Well, then she came to me in junior year and she said, hey, can you drive a double clutch? And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, Y107 has a fire truck. It's a 1944 Ford fire truck with a double clutch. And nobody there knows how to drive it. But if you know how to drive it, a double clutch, I think I can get you a job there. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been driving double clutches all my car has a double clutch. I'd never heard of a double clutch. She said, great. Well, call Mark Chase and he'll be expecting your call. So I skipped the next class. I went back to the dorm and I called Mark Chase, and I'm thinking, Mark Chase was the afternoon guy on Y107.
Right.
I'm thinking, this guy's not going to call me back. There's no way. But I left a message for him, and I remember going down the hallway to a friend's dorm room or whatever, leaving my door open just in case the phone rang. And sure enough, 10, 15 minutes later, it rang, and I ran down the hallway, picked it up, and it was Mark Chase, and it was the same voice that I'd heard on the radio. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did call me back. So he asked me a question. So you know how to drive a double clutch? Oh yeah, Mark. Whew, I'm a double clutch driver from way back. So this is what he said to me. He said, well, come on down to the radio station this afternoon. I'll take a look at you. That's exactly what he said. I'll take a look at you and I'll figure out if you're right for the job. Like, all right, Mark, we'll see you this afternoon. So then I'm like, obsessing over that. He's going to take a look at me.
Right.
Okay, so I can't look like a dork, but I don't want to look like, I don't want to go in like t-shirt and shorts or whatever. I remember what I was wearing. I wore a purple and black flannel shirt, black jeans, and I don't know, probably cowboy boots because I still wear cowboy boots. But anyway, he hired me on the spot and I started that week. And
you had the look, apparently.
Evidently.
You had the look.
That's what Roxette said. Anyway, just took care of the vehicles, washed them, took them wherever. Flunky for the disc jockeys. When Mark would bring his dog to work and he would go number 2 in the hallways, I'd have to clean it up. That's a true story too.
Were you ever put to the test on the double clutch?
Oh yeah. And it's the easiest thing. You just have to push it twice. You push it once to take it out of gear, you let off, you push push the clutch in a second time to put it back into gear. It's a no-brainer. I mean,
all right, guys. So this is something for like semi-trucks and heavy equipment, I'm guessing.
Yeah, just bigger. And I don't even think, I think it was just because the truck, it was,
from 1945.
42 years old.
Yeah.
This was 1986.
What would you guys do with the fire truck? Just take it around to station events?
Yeah. And mostly serve like soft drinks out of it. I remember in Louisville, LRS 102 had the Pepsi pumper. This was the same idea. I think Coke sponsored it, at first, and then it switched to something else. But it was just a novelty station vehicle that wasn't manned.
I love the theater of it. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you eventually rise at Y107 to morning show producer and an on-air host.
Yeah, let's see. After I'd been there maybe 4 months, and they let me on the air one night. There were three of us. One person got to do midnight to 6. The other one got to do 2 to 4, and then the other one. I'm sorry. First one did 2 to midnight to 2, and then 2 to 4 and 4 to 6. And I don't remember. I think I had the midnight one or the 2 a.m., but we were just live without a net, trying to find part-time disc jockeys, and they kept scheduling me. So then my roommate, who is Tom Steele, Tom is half of the Hawk and Tom show at FBC in Greenville, South Carolina, if you know that.
Sure.
Station. Tom and I were college roommates. Tom was going to be an engineer at NASA. His dad was a NASA lifer and had lined up a job for him. Well, Tom started going with me in the fire truck and figuring out, wow, being in radio is a great way to meet girls. And so he lost interest in the NASA gig that his dad got him. All true, not exaggerated. And then
his dad must have been thrilled about that.
Yep, no doubt. Then Mark Chase started having Tom do stuff around the radio station, getting paid $3.35 an hour minimum wage for it. And then Mark started scheduling Tom and me to be on the air together. So I was no longer a solo weekend overnight jock. It was the Tim and Tom show. And so we did that for a few years.
Remarkable. So in your early 20s, you're now doing mornings in Nashville, which is really...
Well, no, that was just weekends.
Oh, weekends. Okay, understood.
But after about a year, Mark, and by the way, I'm going to say Mark Chase's name a million times. If we're only talking 20 minutes from now, Mark Chase is... I could tear up talking about the man. He not only gave me the opportunity that is provided for my family, but I've worked for him in 5 different settings, 2 different companies, and he just continues to be one of my best friends.
You guys have, and I know that you started working together. It's so early on in your career, and he's the one who first gave you your first gig in the business. And so I'm excited to dive.
He was a 26-year-old first-time PD when he hired me.
Unbelievable. And it was all just based on those that look that you had.
I guess it was. That's right. He got married in 2021 and he asked me to do the wedding, and which was also very exciting.
That's incredibly cool. What a phenomenal honor. Have you done any other weddings before? Or is that your first?
I have. You know what? I've done one other one, and it also was for a radio person.
Was it really?
This was just last year. So Jason Pullman, who does afternoons here in Dallas on KPLX.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
99.5 The Wolf.
That's great. Jason and I worked together here at Clear Channel iHeart back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
When I was at K-Big and he was at Star.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, he had found out, his fiance found out that I had a history doing this, albeit one wedding for one other radio guy. But anyway, so I did his wedding too. So,
hey, I think you should officially hang up your wedding shingle, and you're now available to radio executives and talent and anyone in the industry. I love that idea.
Hey, you know what? And I work for free. I even pay for my own travel.
Well, that's phenomenal. So you go from Nashville to Tampa, which, is a big leap. You're early mid-20s at this point, and you become an air talent there. And it's not only just Tampa, but it's the legendary Power Pig, which has so much history. What a jump, Tell me a little bit about how that all happened.
Tom and I had worked together in Nashville part-time. Mark promoted us to full-time after about a year. So we're 21 at this point, doing overnights from 2 to 5 a.m. live. And yes, if anyone's listening to this that's not been in radio for more than 20 years, overnights, it used to be live all the time.
And a team show overnights.
A team show. And then both Tom and I were the morning show producers for the Y Morning Zoo, which was anchored with Coyote McLeod, another legendary name in the business.
Yeah. It's talent. The station was packed with talent.
It really was. Y107, at that time, Nashville was like almost just in the high 40s, like market 47 or something. So it never really got the attention that I think a lot of CHRs like it did, even though it deserved the attention. Mark did a tremendous job there. And this is an actual quote. Scott Shannon told me this. We were talking about Mark once, and Scott said, yeah, Mark Chase, he took what I did and made it better. And when he said that, he was talking more about Y107 than he was even FLZ in Tampa.
That's an incredible compliment.
That is no exaggeration. But yeah, Y107 was a great radio station. It's still there, called The River now. It's been a top 40 all these years. But Tom and Mark had two places in the budget, one for an overnight jock and one for a morning show producer. He hired Tom and me, and one of us took the budget for the overnight jock and the other one for the morning show producer. But we did overnights and produced the morning show. That's
a great experience because you're really two crafts, but so incredibly important. And it gave you this foundation, to be great on-air talent, but also to be, a producer and really understand the mechanics of a morning show, which is a phenomenal way to learn, especially so early on.
Indeed. And to learn from people like Coyote McLeod. Rhett Walker was on that. Rhett was in the business for years. Mark moved from afternoons to mornings. So working with the three of those guys, it was like a grad school for how to be an air talent, with working with those guys every day.
And obviously you had the intuition and your friend helped you get that gig, but to land in such a wonderful learning environment, and to get those opportunities was really fortunate.
I'm the luckiest man on earth. I truly am.
So you get to Tampa. And what was that like? Were you in just immediately, or is it something you were nervous about? Because you grew up basically in the Midwest, and now you're heading to the East Coast, and it's a completely different vibe. Was there any anxiety with that, or you're just like, I'm ready to go?
Oh no, it was so exciting. So, Mark did really well in Nashville, took the station to 17.5 share, 17.3, I think maybe was the peak. FLZ in Tampa was an oldie station, as I recall, was losing $1 million a year, maybe $2 million. I don't remember now. And this is at Jacor when Frank Wood, who just recently passed away, Bo Wood. Bo is the president. Randy Michaels, the other mentor, he and Mark Chase are on my personal Mount Rushmore of people that are so special to me. But it was like an on again, off again thing for a long time on, are we going to do top 40 in Tampa or not? Are we going to keep losing money with an oldie station? And this hasn't been talked about a lot, and I haven't seen it in a long time. We were ready to go, and I'm pretty sure I remember this right. Randy was ready to go, wanted to do top 40 against Q105. Like, we got the perfect PD who's just killed it in Nashville. Frank Wood did not want to do top 40 because at that time, Jacor owned Eastman Radio, the national rep firm.
Okay.
And Eden's Broadcasting was a client of Eastman. So finally it got to where it's like, listen, we got to do this. And so, we finally did it. September 25th of 89, FLZ became the Power Pig. So I was thrilled. I was just turned 22 years old. I just turned 23 by that point. I'd been married for 5 months. And my wife and I went off to Tampa, and I just thought, oh my gosh, to live in a tropical setting like that, living near the beach, beautiful weather, and to take on a dynasty like Q105 Tampa, I was enough of a radio geek to where I knew how big a deal that was.
That was a gigantic deal. So you were there for the flip.
Technically, no. So I got there a week or so later. So Jack Evans, you might remember Jack worked in Jacor for a long time. Jack was in Jacksonville, replaced Mark. They brought him to Nashville, and Jack told Mark, all right, so you're going to take Tim and Tom. And by the way, Mark raided Y107 and took a bunch of us down there.
Okay.
But we were the only jocks immediately anyway. Jack said, hey, Mark, I'd like to talk to Tim and Tom. Don't take them down there until I can make a case to keep them. We'll let the decision be theirs. And so Mark said, yeah. I didn't arrive in Tampa until like the beginning of the second week of October. So I was not there for the sign-on, but we were all on the quote, listen line. You remember those.
Of course.
Listening when it happened and when they switched, called Gary Edens, they'd held him hostage. Okay, here's your last chance. You pay us $1 million or we're going to flip top 40. And he said, come on, guys. And so we did. And the rest is history.
Must have just been electrifying. Could you feel it pretty much from the very get-go that the station was popping?
Yeah. It was difficult to know in that first week since I wasn't there yet. And I was only hearing the stories. But yeah, once I got there and just saw how the station was presenting itself on the streets to complement what people were hearing over the air, our station vehicles were like old 1960s and 70 models, 4-door cars that we spray painted with pink fluorescent paint and then would put the Power Pig in black spray paint down the side in the frequency 93.3. So it was like the anti-radio station in every possible way. So here's a good example. That our first book on the air was fall 1989. Q105 was giving away an 89 Mustang GT with 10 grand in the glove box.
It's a great prize.
So we launched a similar promotion.
Yeah.
We gave away a 68 Impala with $10 in change in the floorboard. So people went crazy about stuff and Tom and I would take these cars out and we'd go to a promotion and we'd each drive a car, just so we can make a bigger impact.
Yeah.
But also, and again, this is no exaggeration. So we, in the parking lot of wherever we were, we could have a little demo derby, like run into each other and people were going nuts. They loved it. Q105 didn't stand a chance. They took themselves too seriously, and we took nothing seriously.
That's a great lesson. That is a great lesson. How cool is that? And so you're on the air, you're doing afternoons, the station.
Went down to do late nights.
Okay.
And then did nights. John Anthony moved. So Mark went on the morning show. Mark did the afternoon show at first. Legendary John Rock and Roll Anthony, who worked in D.C. and Boston and other places, was doing nights. Mark was too busy. He took himself off the air in those early days of the radio. The station was not even a month old. Moved Anthony to afternoons, moved Tom and me from late nights to nights. And then when Anthony moved on a year or so later is when Tom and I moved to afternoons.
Got it. Absolutely amazing. Is Randy at this point really involved with the day-to-day, or is Mark doing most of it? Or
Mark's doing all of it. Randy is just the world's greatest cheerleader.
Yeah.
And having ideas, of course.
Sure.
But no, Randy was living in Cincinnati, and he would come to town frequently, but it was Mark's ship.
I remember, and this is the very early days of, we're, relatively the same age, but I remember kind of following along in the trades and just what a massive deal it was. And I was in San Diego a few years later, but we stole and we created a Surf Pig, which was a 1973 Cadillac. This is a gigantic monstrosity of a vehicle. And we would pull people over all over town that had the Star 100.7 sticker. And I, spent a few summers driving that all over the place, but it was absolutely an homage to what you guys had been, what you guys had paved. And it was just the stunts that you did, and it was just such a great sounding radio station.
Yeah, radio stations have been so slick for so long. When you do something that's really dumbed down and the opposite of what people are expecting, it gets so much more attention.
Yeah,
or it did then, and it would again, by the way.
I'm sure. When you guys are mapping this whole vision out and while you're there, what was the creative process like? Is it you and Mark, and are you guys in a room just coming up with some of this crazy stuff, or how did you guys develop the plot line, if you will?
I mean, me, not really, because I was just a 23-year-old, immature disc jockey trying to figure out, how can I be even more ridiculous tonight or this afternoon than I was the day before. Same with Tom. So no, I mean, I wasn't part of that. I was just responsible for my, 4 hours on the air. It was a very collaborative environment, but I was never, an APD, MD, BJ Harris was the APD, Jeff Capugi, who we called Booger, was the music director.
That staff is unbelievable. So BJ Harris,
BJ, who's now been in Denver a million years.
Yeah. And it just, by the way, just had some amazing ratings that I just had sent to me, just crushing it.
Yeah.
That is you, Mark. Who else is there at that time?
Jeff Capugi, he was the overnight guy and the music director. And then when Tom and I think he did late nights too. But Jeff was part of the oldies format, Z93. So he was a holdover from that. Mark hired BJ to come over from Orlando. He was at BJ 105. So BJ went by JJ over there, JJ Harris.
Okay.
When he came to Tampa, he got to be BJ again. Mark gave us all weird names. I mean, I just used my first name, but BJ was BJ the Fat Man. Jeff Capugi, I think he went by Jeff K on the air. I know he did. So Mark called him Booger because he had a big nose, still does. And let's see, Dave Mann, who, worked in Florida CHR for a long time, Jacksonville, and worked in Miami. He was the midday guy. They called him Dave the Bat Man. He was a big baseball player. John Rock and Roll Anthony. Let's see, who else? Jeff Lawrence. The
VO talent, Jeff Lawrence?
VO talent. He was there. He was our production guy.
Wow.
I don't think he was ever on the air full time. He did weekends. But yeah, Jeff worked there, holdover from the oldies format. Dr. Don Carpenter, who was legendary in like Springfield, Missouri at that CHR, that the call letters escape me now. They brought him to Tampa, and then he had a long career doing country in Detroit.
That's like the murderer's row, man. The equivalent of the Yankees. What an impressive lineup and just a group of talent all assembled together. I can understand why the magic came out of the speakers.
And Jack Harris, who was a market institution in Tampa, who had worked all over. Z93 stole him from Q105, and he just stepped down a few years ago from WFLA, our AM sister. A lot of people who came together and got to do a pretty cool thing together. I need to give you one other name, though.
Please.
I don't know if you know the name Mike Abel.
I do not.
Abel is spelled ALBL. Mike Abel worked under Randy at corporate and was the person who came up with the name The Power Pig.
Okay.
And Mike's been out of radio, out of media for a little bit. But I mean, this guy was like an amazing brainiac, truly a genius, not an exaggeration at all. Working for Randy, who is also a genius, but in a P.T. Barnum sort of way. Mike was just like a laboratory guy,
Yeah.
But he would take all of these great ideas that he had and run it through a guerrilla warfare filter and come up with some of these great ideas. So Mike Abel is another one who is probably the most underrated person when it comes to Power Pig success conversations. But he
came up with the name.
He did.
Which is legendary. It's still to this day, you mention that name. There's not anyone in this industry that doesn't know it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's incredible. What a phenomenal story. I could pick your brain for an entire episode just on that. I really could.
Let's do that next week.
Deal. You go back to the Midwest and you get a program director role at EBN in Cincinnati. You've been on the air this entire time. When did you decide that you were interested in the programming side, and how did you get the opportunity to go to a great market like Cincinnati?
Well, I went in as APD. I went home to Louisville for my first PD job, suburban FM, doing country. And Tom Owens was the PD of EBN. When Randy became CEO of Jacor, Randy promoted Tom Owens to replace him as VP of programming.
Okay.
And so it's like, okay, Mark's never done rock radio, but he has done an amazing job with 2 radio stations and made them legendary. Let's see what he can do with EBN. So he brought me in as APD, brought Brad Harden in right after me as music director. So Mark was PD, I was APD, Brad was MD, and again, just a great environment to grow in and learn, and to take a station that had, it had always had the cool factor to freshen the music. I mean, this is 94, and it was, hadn't really embraced grunge. You might be able to hear Nirvana after 9 o'clock at night, an occasional Metallica record, things like that. We focused it on 25, 34 men, knowing that the 1824s and the 3544s will be along for the ride. And it worked. So when Mark was promoted, I wasn't full-time on the air there. Brad ended up becoming full-time. He did like late middays. When Mark got promoted to like a regional thing, Jacor started growing. Sure. And he started having responsibility for other markets. That's when Mark promoted me to PD and Brad and so on.
And let me partially set the table and then ask a question. So it's important to note that Jacor is based in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Are the stations in the corporate offices, or were you guys in a different? You were not. But did you now have more access to that corporate environment because of the proximity, or they really just kind of ran it separately?
Absolutely. It went from being able to, instead of seeing Randy once or twice a quarter, you'd see him once or twice a week.
I see.
And go to his house, which is a beautiful place. And
I've seen it from the freeway up on the hill. Yeah.
It's the most amazing view of Cincinnati there is. And that really helped in my development as well, just being around these guys. I remember one of the things that helped me grow is that Mark would drag me and not just me, Tom, others. I would be privy to conversations that I had no business knowing, not as a 21-year-old part-timer or a 22-year-old morning show producer. He was helping me grow just by dragging me he'd go to a record lunch and take me with him, and I'm like, great, free food. I'm all in, But I was learning how to be a PD just sitting next to him.
That mentorship is so incredibly important. And it really speaks a lot about Mark that he took that time, because I think there was a lot of people that wouldn't have been so generous with, showing them the ropes. And so that's, you were very fortunate, but also really wise to take advantage of that and suck it all up, because it turned out great for you. And
if there was no free food, I might have said no.
Here's what a nerd I am. I was in Cincinnati about a year ago, and our mutual good friend Carolyn Gilbert gave me a tour of the city. It was my first. She drove me. I got to see Randy's house, and I got to see where the Jacor, corporate offices were, and the whole deal. But what a great city! I only got to spend a couple days there, but what a fun place to be. I mean, both the the ballpark's right down there. What a very cool town.
I lived in Chicago too, and Cincinnati is kind of like a small Chicago. Blue collar attitude. You can be wealthy without anybody knowing it. It's like Atlanta. People were always flashy. Chicago people aren't flashy. Cincinnati's the same way.
Got it. I would love to go back. I really enjoyed it.
I will say one thing. We were not in the same building, but Mark, programming in the home market for the first time, he would frequently talk about the home field disadvantage. Absolutely.
Was that because there's a magnifying glass over you?
Yeah, it's like, who's going to spend time on the quote listen line? There's that term again.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, I was driving to work this morning and I heard Eddie Fingers was 2 minutes late for the news at the bottom of the hour.
I've got a great listen line story. Sorry, there's a little bit of a tangent, but I got to see Vince Scully speak. This was probably 15, 20 years ago now. And I was just such a massive Vince Scully fan. I think he's just, the creme de la creme when it comes to play-by-play. And back in the 80s, when President Ronald Reagan became president, he was a big Dodger Dodger fan, and he used to love to listen to the games.
Yep.
And Vin called the Dodger games, and he obviously could not do that in D.C. And the question that got posed to Vin in this interview was, do you ever get nervous, was basically the question that Vin asked. And he said, well, he'd done so many games that not really, but that when President Reagan became president, he would sometimes call into the listen line. He was given the listen line because he wanted to listen to Vin call the games. And Vin's producer would know when this had happened and would tell Vin that. And Vin said that was about the only time he would ever get nervous, is knowing that the president of the United States is listening to you call the game.
No doubt. No doubt. What a great story. What two legends, both legends.
Yeah, that always stuck with me. And, the
great.
listen line back in the day. But all right, let's go. I guess you're late 20s, early 30s as I'm doing kind of the math here, and you get tapped to be the director of programming. And it's also important to note Jacor is really at this juncture growing in leaps and bounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, it goes on to be really the biggest broadcast company because it goes on to become Clear Channel. But it was, a lot of people, including myself, argue that it was the foundation in a lot of ways of that, at least in terms of the programming. In my mind, so much of what Clear Channel became was the programming minds of you and Randy and Mark and all these guys that we're talking about, Tom Owens and all these. And so that was really the epicenter of programming brilliance at that point. So you're now tapped. What was that like? That had to have been kind of anxiety inducing to have a role now of that size.
Again, I was just excited to live in America's finest city, as it's known. I mean, you lived there. San Diego's amazing.
Exactly. We were across the street from each other. You had a much bigger role than I did, but that's exactly when I was there. I was going to school, and I got my first gig at KFMB. But you guys were the behemoth there.
KFM, BFM.
That's right. San Diego, KFM, BFM, San Diego. The 80s and 90s are on. San Diego Star, 100.7. That was it.
That's right. Well, we should talk about that one. It used to kill me how Star could do so well. I mean, we've got a wall of rock stations from 91X to KIOZ, the active rock, to KGB. And Star would win with men 25-54, 25-44, 25-34. It was the most maddening thing ever. But that
wasn't unlike the, your Power Pig, and there was no doubt we borrowed a lot of stuff from that. But that was kind of the right time, right moment. The music, that was when Lilith Fair was taken off, and Meredith Brooks and Alanis Morissette. And then you had like Jeff and Jer and, guys like Greg Sims, who's still on the air here. And it was just Tracy Johnson. It was really Jagger and Christie. It was just a crazy stacked lineup.
It was very, very talented. And, to go to San Diego, Jacor knew that, and again, these were conversations I was part of that I really didn't understand very well as someone in their mid to late 20s, about what deregulating radio, the Telecom Act of 1996, and what that was going to mean. And I would hear Randy and Tom and Mark talking, and Bobby Lawrence, Bobby was Jacor's COO, who's also a legend. They were talking about what it was going to look like if the national caps were lifted. So anyway, that finally happened. It passed. President Clinton signed it, I think, on a Tuesday in February. By Thursday, they were flying me to San Diego, where we had an AM and a FM, both licensed to Tijuana, but we also had an FM that we were going to put on with, do Top 40 on, which is now Channel 933.
Yeah.
That was a religious station owned by Family Stations. In licensed El Cajon Studios there. We had it. We simulcast FLZ out of Tampa on it, the same frequency, until we finally put Channel 933 on it later that year. But at any rate, Mike Lickenhouse, who is the general manager, who also has just been a great friend over the years and someone who was great to work with, he had a PD opening, and Randy and Tom asked Mark, like, hey, I think we could use Timmy in San Diego. Are you okay with that? He's like, what do you, I'm not going to say no to that. So literally 2 or 3 days after, I'm flying out to meet Glickenhaus. And again, I'm like 28, 29 years old, and it's February, and I land at the airport, and I'm driving down Harbor Drive to my hotel room downtown. And I just thought, this is too good to be true. I was too dumb to be scared, just like Tampa.
And now, though, you're overseeing all of the stations.
All the FMs.
Yeah. So that's a really sizable role. How did that change in terms of your day to day? I mean, it's interesting because chronologically, the way that your career has really moved along, you've been prepped so well along the way. You know, you're doing overnights, morning show producer. Well, you started with the driving around the fire truck, but you really you're learning all aspects of the business, and then you become the program director in Cincinnati. But now you've got multiple stations, and then you're going to have program directors at the individual properties, stations below you, that now you're even in a bigger management role. And I'm guessing at your age, some of them are going to probably be a little bit, maybe some animosity towards the role. And I don't know, but that I think could be a possibility.
You know, maybe not. You know, certainly some of the people who were at Noble and 91X in the early stages didn't like what was happening and how, you know, what deregulation had meant. But I couldn't mess it up if I wanted to as we grew, because here's Jack Evans' name again. So Jack was there, who oversaw the Western region for Jacor.
Okay. And
I was just his San Diego guy, FM guy.
Got it.
And programmed, at that point I was programming Rock 105.3, the active rocker, and we had a hot AC mix.
Right.
At 95.7 KMSX, and director of FM programming. And that was really to give Jack one point of contact for the FMs, as opposed to being the person that was driving strategy or, you know, cracking the whip on the PDs. I mean, did I serve in that role? Yeah, but more than that, it was just to simplify things for Jack, who was overseeing everything from Denver to the West.
Got it. Are you at this point missing being on the air at all, or you were pumped about doing programming and kind of see yourself more as a programmer?
You know, I was on the air every day until I went to EBN, and I thought I would miss it. And I never really did. Never did.
San Diego was, and I look back at that, what a great time in my career. It's an incredibly competitive market. There's a lot of radio stations because you have the stations that are in San Diego proper, but then you also have stations that are licensed in Tijuana. And so there's more stations per capita in in San Diego than just about any other market. I think maybe El Paso is kind of similar, but, you know, so it was hyper competitive, and it was just a phenomenal time. And I loved that competition. You know, we were all following so closely what each other were doing, and it was a lot of fun.
Remind me, when was it that you went to LA?
2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was there 96 to 99, about 3.5 years. So we were, for some reason, I thought you went to LA before I left.
Just a little bit after you left. Yeah. I came up here to produce for Rick Dees, and came up, to work at KISS and work with him. But, it was just, San Diego was a great experience, and talking about just the quality of morning shows that were down there at that time, and you know, the whole deal. So I'm glad I got to share that with you, even though we didn't, we knew of each other, we didn't know each other, but personally, but
we were trying to beat each other's brains out.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah.
You know, you didn't have to worry about me. I was at the male station. You were at the female station. You had all the male numbers too.
So you get tapped to go to Georgia and Atlanta, and you become the RVP there. And now you're leading 6 stations in Atlanta, which is a big, Atlanta is now top 10 market, and certainly another incredibly competitive market. So tell me a little bit about that opportunity.
Gene Romano was in Atlanta as a East Coast programming person. You know, we had Jack in the West, and Mark Chase at this point was doing like the Midwest, and Gene had the East. 96 Rock, he went down there to work on 96 Rock specifically, and what programmer is more qualified to do that than Gene Romano, who was the architect of DVE in Pittsburgh. But it was time for him to hire a PD, and I was lucky enough to get the nod to that. And that was my job. What you described, the regional VP or whatever, was my last job when I left there. But I first went in solely as PD of 96 Rock, and that was an exciting time. I remember 96 Rock when I was in Nashville. because Bill Pugh, who was the PD at KDF in Nashville, and that was my favorite radio station until I started working at Y107. I remember when Bill Pugh went from Nashville to Atlanta, Atlanta severely under-radioed. So you had all these stations like in a big market that could have an 8 or a 10 share.
Right.
And Bill had done a great job there. So 96 Rock had always been on my radar. And certainly it was one of those truly heritage AOR stations that did so well for so long. So it was exciting to go there.
Along the way, is your wife supportive of all these moves? I mean, you're really crisscrossed in the country.
I guess so. I mean, we're still married, so 46 years as of May.
Congratulations.
As I think back, she was not excited to go to Tampa. She was okay going to Louisville. She was not okay going to Cincinnati because her mom had moved to Louisville, and then boom, Mark moves to Cincinnati and says, "Hey, come up here." And so her mom had been there like 4 or 5 months, and we left. But we were only an hour and a half away.
Okay.
San Diego was exciting to her. Obviously, who wouldn't be? Atlanta was because we had family there. But yeah, I would say it was hit or miss, but mostly no. She's not been thrilled about moving in general. I don't know why she's. I guess she loves me as much as I love her.
No, congratulations. That's 35 years, very impressive. So
thanks.
Yeah, it's also important, I think, to just. Jacor, which now has become Clear Channel by this point, is just growing in leaps and bounds. And so it probably becomes 4 or 5x bigger than what it was when you first started working there. And what was being at the level that you were, tight, obviously, with Mark and Jack and Randy, what was all that like? Just kind of, that had to have been exciting in and of itself as the company became bigger, the stock price, goes through the roof. Was that tell me a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
First of all, Jacor had 7 stations when I joined. We got 8 and 9 when they bought the Fox and KOA in Denver, as I recall.
Jeez, I didn't realize it was so small when you joined. That's crazy. So,
it was, I think we were at 400 stations before Clear Channel bought us.
Holy moly. It's grown by like, what is that, 50x, something like that in terms of total stations? Yeah. Like
I said a few minutes ago, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, I just wanted to be on the radio and wandered into a radio station and convinced a guy that I was the right person to drive the fire truck, not knowing that I would end up working with people that are truly Radio Hall of Famers, whether they're in it or not.
Yeah.
These are the most talented programmers, air talent. Have you ever heard an air check of Randy Michaels?
I have not.
I'm telling you, if he would have stayed on the air, we would have been short one phenomenal broadcast executive, the best ever in my book, but we would have had an additional entertainer. Randy's good at everything he does. Everything.
He's a phenomenal story. I've seen him speak a few different times, and I'm just always so enamored, by him and certainly what he's created. But yeah, he's talking about just a huge proponent of the business, and I want to get into it in a little bit. Just I know he's bought a couple stations, and I think Dayton and Cincinnati, so I'm excited to hear about that. But he just loves the industry.
He does.
Tell me about you after close to, let's see, about 15 years now, probably with Jacor, which then becomes Clear Channel. You leave and you go to another, I think, phenomenal company. You leave to go to Chicago to go talk. I mean, you've been to some amazing call letters along the way too, but now you go to be the PD of the Loop and work for Jeff Samuelian and Rick Cummings. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I left Clear Channel. Randy left in 2002, about 3 years after we became Clear Channel, and things began to change. Dropped a lot of names here, but I don't need to drop names in this situation. They changed, and my general manager, who was a wonderful man, a wonderful Christian man, who passed away in the last year or two, Pat McDonnell.
That name sounds familiar.
He moved into a different role. His replacement wanted to reset who his leadership team was. And there were a handful of markets, like 3 markets that I was offered another role in Clear Channel. And I thought, no, I think it's time. It's been 18 years. I think I should go try something else. And I knew Mike Stern, who was at Q101, the alternative station, had been there for a while. Emmis bought the Loop from Bonneville. That also put Jimmy Steele in the VP of programming role, who I knew from our mutual time, not only at Jacor, but when we were competitors in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So I knew these guys, I trusted them, and they're just great quality humans as well. And convinced them that I was the right person to be named the PD of the Loop. And that only lasted 2 years, unfortunately. But that was an amazing time. We went and hired Jonathan Brandmeier and brought him back to.
I remember that. Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal. I've worked with a lot of great air talent, but none as talented as Johnny B.
He's a remarkable talent.
League of his own.
It always felt to me that Jacor led first with creativity, and it was a company that was and I get business has changed, and it, around this time started to become more financial, maybe run by financial people versus, creative people. And I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but it's definitely different in terms of culture. And as a whole, I certainly look back at those days and just the crazy fun things that we got to do, and the entertainment that we created for listeners was, unparalleled at that point, and
you would hear frequently from Randy, from Tom Owens, from Mark. We didn't have it printed on and hung on a wall anywhere, to my knowledge, but you would hear frequently, ratings bring advertisers. Advertisers don't bring ratings.
Really good saying.
So yeah, it's like creativity first. And if we're here to make money, we got to get ratings. If we're going to get ratings, it's going to be because we're entertaining, we're different. And that made it easy to recruit strong programmers because of that sort of environment, and where the company was not afraid to take risks and rewarded creativity. It was a great environment to be a programmer in.
It's also kind of remarkable about your career are the cities you've gotten to work in are all just these world-class cities. I don't see Terre Haute anywhere. We're talking about like Nashville, Tampa, San Diego, Atlanta, Chicago. You've worked in some amazing towns.
I promise I'm the luckiest person you've ever talked to. I could have walked into any radio station in America, and I walked in and met Mark Chase, and he works for Wendy Michaels. It has been the greatest blessing in my career.
So talking about Chicago, Randy and his buddy Sam Zell buy Tribune in 2000, I guess 6, 7, something like that. Mm-hmm. And you guys, they brought the team back together. Tell me about working at Tribune and being their VP of marketing.
Yeah, gosh, I don't remember my first title there. That's what it evolved in. Like all of these titles were the last thing that I did there. But yeah, I worked a lot with Sean Compton. There's a name that hasn't come up yet, but Sean has an unbelievable radio pedigree, even though he's like a big TV deal now.
Yeah, I just ran into him at NAB a few months ago, and it was I hadn't seen him in years, but talking about just crushing it. He's doing amazing.
I ran into him at Wrigley Field 2 weeks ago.
Did you really?
He's sat right in front of me, yeah. But I hadn't seen him in years. But Sean was running Tribune broadcasting programming at that point. So I worked closely with him, but also with Mark and Jeff Capucci, Mike O'Connor, and a bunch of us who had helped Jacor win that Mark brought in to Tribune, as it was called at that time, Tribune Interactive. The plan was to bring creativity and functionality to digital as we had to radio. And, between the bankruptcy and people at Tribune not really being ready for change.
Yeah.
And as they say, don't pick a fight with people that buy ink by the barrel. The culture there did not embrace the change that needed to happen. Mm-hmm. It didn't go as well as I expected, but it's still, it was 2.5 years and a tremendous learning experience. And to have had a digital only role in the, late 2000s, 2007,
way ahead of your time.
Because even at that point, not a lot of stations were even streaming, not even simulcasting at that point. It was cost prohibitive. So it really made me think digitally more than I had prior to that.
It gives you certainly a lot of digital education. And then you also worked with some TV, which I think was probably the first time in your career.
It was, yeah.
Which is a whole other kind of interesting beast.
Yep.
After Tribune, you go and become the director of operations for Next Media Group. And you stayed in Chicago, overseeing 11 stations there and also in Wisconsin. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I took that job expecting I would have it a lot longer. I only had it for 6 months. I was talking to a faith-based nonprofit in Dallas because I was ready to leave media. Again, this is right in the middle of the recession, 2010. I knew that Tribune was going to be over. So I started thinking about what I wanted to do. And a friend of mine gave me a copy of the book called Halftime by Bob Buford.
Okay.
I don't want to go into detail. If anybody's interested, they can Google that. But it helps people transition from success to significance and do, as they say, in the New Testament, Ephesians 2:10, it talks about what the good works are that God prepared in advance for you. And as a Christian, that was so intriguing to me. But it was a small nonprofit based in Dallas. I was living in Chicago. I didn't know what it was going to look like. Got an opportunity to work at Next Media and join them and function in the role that you mentioned. But I was not there for very long before Halftime offered me the COO role in mid 2011. And we've been in Dallas ever since.
Got it. I want to unpack that for a second. So you have, because this is, I think, very, very fascinating, and the shift in your career while you're doing what you're doing, but making this shift at this point when Tribune and I guess kind of implodes is the best way to, say it. Is there a lot of, and it's a personal question and you don't have to answer, are you relatively set up at this point from the success at Jacor, or are you at a part in your life where you really need to continue to work at this juncture? Do you have a lot of anxiety?
No, I was 44 years old. I mean, I've had a third or fourth grader and a wife that was sick of moving. And
you got it. Yeah.
So
sure.
what do? We move.
So you got to figure it out. Financial recession, which that's when I lost my gig. It was huge, that impacted not just our industry, but just about every other one. How did the book come to you? Were you searching for something at that point, or did it just?
I was, yeah. The book is called Halftime because it talks about getting to the midpoint of your career.
I see.
Or your life, and deciding what's the second part of that going to look like. But also there are numerous sports analogies, like, the game is generally won or lost in the second half. So halftime is a time when the team goes to the locker room and regroups, and the coach gives direction and vision, and the team goes out and executes or doesn't, and wins or doesn't. So again, I love that concept, and I was truly in halftime because of the career volatility in media. And golly, when you think back to 2009, 2010 now, those were the good old days compared to what's going on.
Yeah, sure. You're 100% correct. Yeah.
But it just seemed like, gosh, this is over, and I don't know what God has planned for me, but I know it's not to change jobs every 2 years, as I had when I was in Chicago.
So you start to lead the operations now in 2011, and this is the first time that you've moved from a for-profit to a nonprofit. Tell me a little bit about the culture difference there, and just how that speaks to your soul, and I'm assuming is more fulfilling in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, nonprofit, I didn't have to worry about debt because we had none. I didn't have to worry about Wall Street volatility. When your mission is the most important thing, every organization, or at least those with common sense, have a mission statement. And in nonprofit, nothing matters other than your mission statement, unless there's something wrong with your organization. And I've been fortunate to work in nonprofit circles where the mission is all that matters. We don't have debt to service. Our politics are under control. Anywhere where two or more people are gathered, there's going to be politics, but I can only excel as long as you're losing something, it's a different environment. So that was intriguing. And, 4 years of that at the Halftime Institute was fantastic.
And you're also now you become the COO. So this is the first time you're in the C-suite, which has a whole other set of responsibilities. And was that something that you, being as creative as you are, not that you you were a VP and you were in some really high roles where you had to make tough decisions and have a lot of sometimes administrative responsibility that isn't so fun for programmer types like ourselves. Right. But now as a COO, that's at a whole other level. How did you adapt to that?
Being I don't want to say that I was the most creative person, but I definitely came from a more creative environment than any of my colleagues had worked in and brought ideas. One of them was for us to just expand our digital presence. I mean, sure, there was a website, but social media wasn't being exploited and things like that. So it was easy for me to find ways, things that I was proficient at and had experience with that others, day one, I was the expert on those things based on what I'd done. So I got to contribute and be thanked for it, and oversaw revenue generation, and our revenue grew. And it was a great experience, and one that, when I hear people talk about work-life balance, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit, because whatever your definition is of that, probably two people are going to have a different definition of what that looks like. But I will say that it was a job that I didn't have to take home at night, like when I was in radio, when I was in media.
I get that.
And I love that part.
I get that. In 2015, these now two passions in your life merge and you become the general manager of Way FM. How did that opportunity happen?
Frank Reed, legendary morning guy at KLTY Dallas. Before that, he was at WNBC in middays between Emmis and Howard. And meeting Frank, he said, Way FM's coming to Dallas. And I knew of Way FM, and I knew it as a brand. I wasn't really aware of how it was programmed and operated. But I just kind of bypassed it as, it's just like K-Love. They don't need people in all these markets. Everybody's just where the network's based, which for Way happened to be in Colorado Springs at the time. But he's like, no. He said, all the air talent are in Nashville for Way FM. All their markets, at least the larger ones, they'll have a small team of people. So they need a general manager in Dallas when they sign on in a couple of months. The guy who is hiring for that position has been a friend of mine from New York, Lloyd Parker. I need to connect with Lloyd. And so he did, and I got the job. I'd never been a GM before. I'd never sold in non-com, not that we were selling it, but going out securing underwriters. I mean, It's the same idea.
Yeah.
Even though the copy's much different. And I'd never done that before. And so that was, I was nearly 50 at that point, and I was having to learn something new all over again, and managed to succeed at it somehow.
And what was it like when you're going out and you're doing sponsorship calls and learning that part? Was that something that you picked up on relatively quickly? I'm sure you had some experience as a program director. You went on some calls with, your general managers and so forth. But leading the charge, did that give you anxiety, or was something you were able to adapt to pretty quickly?
From a personal, as a quote, selling manager, no, it didn't. I would say the only part, the tough part was finding, we don't call them salespeople. We call them business development directors. That's what it is, a business development. Yeah. Finding good ones, and who can be successful and who can stay and be in the position for a while. That was the challenging part. Here's another name, Mike Kinney. Mike Kinney was the general manager of Y107 when I was there. He said something once that I've always remembered. He said, my success has nothing to do with how smart I am. He goes, I'm not the smartest guy in the market, but I promise you, I'm the hardest working guy in the market. He said that to me when I was 20 years old. I mean, here I am all these years later. I could become good at business development because I was just willing to work.
Outwork them. I so believe in that.
Finding people who wanted to work as hard as I did, that's hard.
Very hard. Would you listen to the station sometimes and your programming mind go, oh, I wish I was doing, they were doing this a little bit different.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So, Rob Wagman was our PD when I joined in 2015.
Oh, I remember Rob. Yeah.
We worked together at FLZ in the early 90s.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. That must have been because he was close with
Capugi.
Capugi. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So Rob was the programming then.
Yep. I used to wear him out, I'm sure, but he was always so kind and patient and listened. And, but yeah, I mean, hey, old habits.
Yeah, I totally get it. You rise all the way to COO, and you are, again, in this big executive role. But now, I mean, how many stations does Way FM have, or Way Media?
50 licenses or so. Yeah, in the 50s. You know, a lot of them are translators. I think full powers, we were in the 22, something in the low 20s.
And I'm guessing hundreds of employees?
Yeah, about 100.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big organization. How does that change for you? You've been in that role with Halftime Institute. I'm not sure the size of a Halftime Institute, but now you are really overseeing a large company, all facets of it. How did you prepare for that, and what was that like?
Yeah, Halftime only had about a dozen people.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, you know how it is, man. You get to a point where you've just done something long enough, even the parts you've never done before, you figure it out and you don't wring your hands over it, because age not only brings experience, but it brings confidence too. But also working under good people, and Lloyd Parker, who hired me when he moved on in 2020, reported to him he was tremendous to work for, and I learned from him as well. But I can tell you, it's a lot easier when you don't have banks and shareholders to deal with.
I'm sure that's true. I am sure that's true. But there's no doubt it's a big responsibility, and you've got things coming at you every single day. And I say, even in my role, which is a fraction the size of your role, you just never, you're waking up a lot of times to a fire that you weren't expecting, that you got to jump in and get involved in. So I've got a lot of respect for that. In 2021, Hope Media and Way, it's announced that they're going to merge. Mm-hmm. And so you become actually the interim CEO of Way as this merger, and you guys are working all this out, which I'm guessing took probably about a year, as that's a pretty big merger. So now you are running that. And then are you also, I'm sure, part of merging these two cultures together?
Yes. Going back to the growth that Jacor had, and seeing how bigger can be better. It's not in all cases, but I saw how it could be. I was a proponent of that from the first time that the idea had come up a couple of years prior, but it never got pursued. When the board appointed me interim CEO following a change at that position, they talked about what it would look like, and we need to hire a full-time CEO. But for now, Tim, it's you. And if it's something you want to pursue, let's definitely talk about it, but let's not get in any hurry here. Because in that same conversation, the merger idea had come up, and Joe Paulo, who is Hope Media Group's CEO, tremendous man. And I knew his reputation better than I knew him, but stellar reputation. I told them, I said, listen, this is my honor to lead in the interim here. If we're going to remain a standalone, I can promise you I'll want to be a candidate to be the permanent CEO, but I would rather be the COO of a merged entity with a quality organization like Hope Media Group than to be the CEO of Way Media. So with the board's blessing, Joe and I started talking about that. Ironically, by God's design, I was going to be in Houston the following week. I'd been scheduled to go there and visit at KSBJ long before any of this came up. But the board chair said, you can talk to Joe about, since you're going to be there, bring up that merger conversation again. And so I did. We talked about it, and that was in June of 21. The board met to talk about it for the first time in August. After due diligence, both boards unanimously approved it in January 22, and that's when we announced it, and we closed in May of 22. But again, watching Randy grow Jacor and later Clear Channel gave me a passion and a vision for what this could look like.
You kind of pinch yourself. I mean, to start in, Nashville, driving around a 1945 fire truck, to leading and being instrumental in the merger between these two, gigantic groups, and to do that successfully. That is a gigantic task, and that had to have been a surreal moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, I really don't think much about the fire truck anymore. I mean, back then, I just wanted to be on the radio, I wanted to make jokes like Gary Burbank and make people laugh. And but I can tell you that this side of it too, and being the furthest, having the furthest office from the control room, now I'll be 59 next month, and I'm having as much fun as I did in my 20s being a goofball.
That's great.
On the radio.
I love that you're able to do that. And do you find yourself, obviously with your background, do you work your way down the hall a little bit and tinker with programming, or are you relatively hands off?
Well, it helps that all of that is based in Nashville and Houston, and I'm in Dallas.
Okay.
No, gosh, I'm telling you, man, for our size, and now that we're merged, we bought a handful of stations, which, by the way, buying radio stations is so much fun.
Is it? I want to get into that. Yeah. Tell me about that.
We outpunch our weight with programming talent here. Everybody that we have worked in secular, got a taste of that. Scott Harold is our head of content. He worked for Disney in Detroit and I think one other company before he got into non-commercial Christian. Jeff Evans used to work for Town Square before he got into Christian radio. He is our VP of radio. So we have digital and radio reporting to Scott Harold. Randy Fox worked for Infinity. He's a program director of KSBJ. Again, just a really talented programmer and gets street warfare as well as anybody. Tony Luna programs. We have a Spanish format, Vida Unida. Tony programmed in New York. He worked for SBS, worked for Odyssey. I mean, these guys have worked at the highest levels. And more recently, we've hired Chris Pickett, who worked for Clear Channel for a long time. He was the PD of Sunny in Vegas, and it was number one for maybe it still is forever, and did the morning show. So these are our program directors. I don't have to tinker in programming.
What these guys, incredible group, man. That's it's like the Power Pig team all back together again, but in a different incarnation. That's fantastic. And I'm assuming that you're able to be much more promotionally active and to do the things that we once got to do in the in the comm world. And that's got to be just not only fun from the creative side of your brain, and I know you've got a massive responsibility in just running this organization, but it's also, I believe, just great for the listener at the end of the day, to be entertaining and to do what we're, supposed to be doing.
Yep. So true.
Not so to have true. The confines that, unfortunately some of the economics have put upon us. So tell me, what is it like to buy a radio station? Walk me through that process.
It's fun, man. I mean, it's especially fun when I don't need this or we don't need this. Negotiating, I don't care if you're buying a car. I mean, this. Whatever you're buying, a house, anything that's a big ticket item.
Yeah.
As long as you don't care, I don't care if I get this or not. You're not going to overpay for something.
Uh-huh.
It's a buyer's market,
yep.
For radio. I remember at Jacor and even Clear Channel, and you'll remember this too, there was a press release practically every three weeks a month
mm-hmm.
that we bought something else significant.
Right.
It might be a company or it might be a cluster. It might be a single station, in a meaningful market, whatever it was. I mean, that was so exciting. And my roles at that point, unless it was in my region, if I was in San Diego, Jack Evans might mention to me, oh yeah, you know what? We're going to buy, this whole cluster in Boise
right.
or whatever. But, I wouldn't necessarily hear about those things. I would read about it in R&R, just like you and everybody else. But it was so exciting that my company was like on the leading edge, and just seeing how Randy would orchestrate all of that. Now, by the way, we bought 3 full power stations and a translator and one group that we're actually awaiting FCC approval on right now, Worship 24/7. It's like 10 licenses, but it's on the smallest scale possible. It is so much fun to do that. And even when it's something that you don't agree on price, or you look at it and you decide you don't want it or whatever, you don't even make an offer. The exploration on that and looking at like, okay, WWRD, what would Randy do? He wouldn't necessarily leave every format on the same frequency. What are the opportunities to move and increase the power? We have not made a move since I've gotten involved in this in the last 4 or 5 years. We've not made a move that I didn't consult with Randy first. And he'll say, let me take a look at it and I'll call you tomorrow, or I'll email you next week. He will not take my money. Like, hey, Tim, I don't know, man. Listen, it's your money. If you want that station, I'm not going to tell you, you shouldn't, but, here's why I don't like it. Or like, hey, that's a pretty good idea. I like how you're filling in the blank there. Whatever. So yeah, that has kept Randy and me in touch.
He's got to be incredibly proud of you, man. That is, I love that you're doing this, and you guys have over 70 stations now. And I mean, it's a big group. If you put that into the commercial world, I'm guessing you guys are like the size of a Hubbard or something, or a Beasley, something about that size.
Probably.
Yeah.
Hubbard's been able to hold on, but you know why? They're private.
Yeah, you're right.
It makes a difference.
You're right. I'm not sure any of us could have predicted. Well, maybe you did. I mean, you really talking about halftime and kind of understanding the pivot, but the world has changed so dramatically in the last, 15 years. And you look at just the sheer amount of dollars that are now spent digitally versus, over the air, traditional linear media. It's crazy. Some of these numbers are just kind of,
Indeed.
And it's turned, when you think about how quickly it's turned, it's gone very fast to that. In the grand scheme of things. But there's no doubt also that I think both secular and non-secular over the air, if you put out great content and you are putting something that is, I think, authentic and resonates with your listeners, that people will 100% listen. It's not digital or analog. It's all about what comes through those speakers. And that's the key, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to that point, and I used to get a lot of questions. I've been joined WFM 10 years ago this month, as a matter of fact. And I would get a lot of questions from guys I worked with at various companies over the years. Like, what's going on with Christian radio? Why? How is it? What are y'all doing? Why? How can KSBJ be number one in Houston? Or how can you do this? And not just Hope Media Group stations, but in a lot of markets where the CCM station is at number one. Again, I go back to, it's all about the mission. We have no distractions. We have more people wearing fewer hats. We have a divine calling. This is a calling for all of us. At least I hope we're called to. If someone's not called here, I wish they would let us know that they found another job somewhere. We only want people who are called to be here. As you mentioned earlier, for me personally, it's a real joy to be able to take my media and ministry experience and put it together. It's just a joy.
You are so incredibly enlightening, and I've got just a tremendous amount of respect. Your career journey is one of the most fascinating that I've ever covered. The success you've had is quite remarkable. It's important to note that you also serve on the Christian Music Broadcasters Association. You're very involved with multiple non-for-profits. I mean, you really do, as you say, and I think that's so important. But I know you've done some missions before, and you've traveled abroad. And you want to talk just a hair about that, because you've spent some time outside of the United States on some missions, and you really dedicate a lot of time to helping people.
Yeah, Mexico a couple of times, Nicaragua, been to Zambia. I think that's all the places. But yeah, people who they don't have clean water, they don't have food, but they still have joy. So it's not only satisfying from a standpoint of you can go and help people. I mean, one of the things we did in Mexico, we were going to people's houses. They lived in adobe houses, and every time it would rain, their houses would be muddy inside because water would come underneath the walls, or they track water in. And living in a house with muddy floors, everything stays dirty. So we went in and poured concrete floors for people and saw people crying, saw women crying because they didn't have to stand in the mud to fix food for their families. Seeing gratitude like that is exciting and fulfilling, but also seeing that people who don't have anything have more joy than you would expect them to. And so it makes you want to do better.
Speaks to who you are as a human being. And I love that you are so dedicated and you give back like that. And I know you love this business and you love every aspect of it, but it's also incredibly clear to me that you love humanity and you live by that. So thank you for everything, not only what you do for our industry and everything that you're doing now in the Christian CCM world, but also what you do just in helping society. I think that is incredibly powerful.
You're very kind to say so. Appreciate you.
Bonus question. Tell me about when Scott Shannon tried to hire you for pirate radio.
So Tom and I had been doing nights at FLZ, the Power Pig. Randy Kabrick, the late great Randy Kabrick, had gone on to Y95 in Dallas, the frequency which became KLTY.
Right.
Randy wanted Tom and me to come to Dallas and do nights for him because of what he saw us do at FLZ. Well, I don't know if and Shannon would come to town. His wife was from Tampa. They met while he was at Q105. Either it was because he heard us and he liked us there, or because he and Randy Kabrick were very competitive. Mm-hmm. So Kabrick's trying to hire us to come do nights in Dallas. And we were already doing nights. We didn't really care to do that. Well, then Shannon, I think just because they were competitive, wait a minute, you're trying to hire these guys? I need a night jock. And then all of a sudden it's like, maybe we'll do nights if it's in LA. I have, back in the day when you got the little pink slips.
Yeah.
For the receptionist,
right.
Somebody called, they'd write it down for you. I still have it. It's dated and it says, from, and the receptionist in her beautiful cursive writing wrote Scott Shannon. And below that, it said message. And it said, where's my tape? ? Thank goodness we didn't go to pirate. We all know that didn't end so well. But Mark's like, hey, do you guys want to go somewhere else and do nights, or you want to stay here in Tampa and do afternoons? For less money than we would have made in Dallas or LA. Yeah. But yeah, that's getting to know Scott. And I've only talked to him once since he retired. I hope he's having a ball.
I need to get him on this podcast. He did a webinar for us a few months ago, and his stories are just phenomenal.
Yes, unbelievable.
I remember, and I was just producing at the time in San Diego for Jagger and Christie, and Scott was running PLJ, and Scott was interested in hiring them to go out to PLJ, and I just remember even just being next to that, the excitement of Scott Shannon and, going to New York, and, it never ended up happening, but it was certainly, it occupied my brain for months, or for weeks, I should say,
As well it should have.
Yeah.
You need to have him on. You need to have Randy and Mark Chase. I mean, these guys are titans. I can't understand why you would want me on, because I've seen the list of people and I've listened to your podcast and seen what you've had on. I'm honored, but those guys did more in the first half of their career than I'll do for the rest of my entire career.
Thank you, by the way, for doing this. I know I had to twist your arm a little bit, and the reason why is because you had said to me what you just said, that I need to have Randy and Mark on, and you're right. And I'm hoping that this will help encourage them to do the show. And so thank you for helping. And man, learning about you has really just been an honor. And thank you again for everything you do. You are an incredible human being and wonderful programmer.
Thank you for all that you do for our industry, and how you truly do love everybody. Everyone has the most glorious things to say about you, and I'm just honored to be here with you.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you'll leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Engineered by Darren Silva and Megan Vasquez. Produced and edited by Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.